Alright, so this is my garage we're walking out toward. Never mind that blue barrel, that's covering some other project. So since these videos are going to substitute as kind of like a vlog, you know, and you're going to get kind of aspects of my life like the screen house and things, here you can see this old two-man saw here. It's all covered in rust and it's just rusty and crazy. It's been sitting in a barn for years and years and years and years. And here you can see its companion, which I have started. See it? Well, that I have started to clean up. You can see if I flip it over, you can see the other side is just still awful. I started to clean it up. You can see the handles have already been restored here, or well, cleaned and sealed. I didn't really do much restoring on the handles. They're actually just they're sealed with boiled linseed oil. That's what I was told to do, and then this thing is being gently sanded while it's lubricated with mineral spirits, and then all the hardware is in the garage here. This is the garage. I'm not going to take you into the garage because the garage is in horrible shape. Horrible. So yeah, so we'll try to get this down to, you know, some sort of bare metal, and that'll be fine. And then I'll reattach the hardware, and hopefully we'll be able to see it later, and it won't look like this anymore. This one's going to be a far bigger project because the blade's so much wider, and it's so time-consuming. But again, there are, you know, other things to the world than video games and books. So, I will see you back at the screen house for Neil Gaiman's Graveyard book, I believe. Hello everybody, it's a Vertical Sandwich. Welcome back to another book review. And today, I don't have my bookmark in, so I can't do it now. It's bookmark. Today, Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard book. So, Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard book 1 in 2009, pretty recent. Pretty recent for something that isn't part of the 3-book series that swept 3 years in a row last year and the 2 years before. Now, first off, let's get one thing out of the way. I looked up a YouTube video of Neil Gaiman telling people how to pronounce his name. It's Neil Gaiman. And for years I said Gaiman, but Neil Gaiman says it's Neil Gaiman. There's literally a video saying, talking to Neil Gaiman about how to pronounce Neil Gaiman. So, that's that. Now, let's read the back cover. It takes a graveyard to raise a child. Nobody Owens, known as Bod, is a normal boy. He would be completely normal if he didn't live in a graveyard, being raised by ghosts, with a guardian who belongs to neither the world of the living nor the dead. There are adventures in the graveyard for a boy, an ancient indigo man, a gateway to the abandoned city of ghouls, the strange and terrible Sleer. But if Bod leaves the graveyard, he will be in danger from the man Jack, who has already killed Bod's family. Okay. Cool. Now, first thing to be said, little out of my wheelhouse here, because this is a fantasy book. This won the Hugo Award for fantasy. I mean, there's not 2 Hugo Awards. It's sci-fi or fantasy. This just happens to be a fantasy book that won the Hugo Award, not a science fiction novel. So this is our first non-science fiction novel that we've reviewed. There's nothing wrong with that. But the majority of Hugo Award winners, by far, are science fiction novels. So if you're reading a list of Hugo Award winners, you're reading a lot of sci-fi novels and not a lot of fantasy novels. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I don't read a lot of fantasy novels. Even my recreational reading outside of the list of Hugo Award winners was all sci-fi. So I haven't read a ton of fantasy. So judging this by a fantasy book, you could maybe argue like Dune really straddles the line. And some books really do straddle the line. I mean, it makes sense that the award is for both categories because science fiction and fantasy can be, if you want a great example of science fiction books that you can't really classify like science fiction / fantasy books, the Shadow of the Torturer series by Gene Wolfe really blurs that line so much that it's almost not. I would have to say they fall on the side of fantasy, and we will talk about those because I have read them and they're good. So Yeah. Now, this book. Let's open it up and read. Oh, by the way, this book is filled with amazing, wonderful illustrations. Let me see if I can find. Oh, there's one. I actually bookmarked the page. See, so like the entire portions of the book will look like this, right? And that's cool. I'm not like I'm actually more familiar with the Sandman stuff by Neil Gaiman. So this was my first novel of his I've read, and I can't wait to read American Gods because it won, I believe, the Hugo Award, the Nebula Award, and the Bram Stoker Award, which it'll be my first Bram Stoker Award winner that I review. But I don't even have it yet. So what are you gonna do? So Chapter 3, The Hounds of God. One grave in every graveyard belongs to the ghouls. Wander any graveyard long enough and you will find it. Water-stained and bulging with cracked or broken stone, scraggly grass or rank weeds about it, and a feeling when you reach it of abandonment. It may be colder than the other gravestones too, and the name on the stone is all too often impossible to read. If there is a statue on the grave, it will be headless or so scabbed with fungus and lichens as to look like a fungus itself. If one grave in a graveyard looks like a target for petty vandals, that is the Ghoul Gate. If the grave makes you want to be somewhere else, that is the Ghoul Gate. There is one in Bod's graveyard. There is one in every graveyard. Silas was leaving. Bod had been upset by this when he had first learned about it. He was no longer upset. He was furious. But why? Said Bod. I told you I need to obtain some information. In order to do that, I have to travel. To travel, I must leave here. We've already been over all this. What's so important that you have to go away? Bod's 6-year-old mind tried to imagine something that could make Silas want to leave him, and failed. It's not fair! His guardian was unperturbed. It is neither fair nor unfair. Nobody owns. It simply is. So, Gaiman's writing is I don't want to say it's simple. It's not. It's very comprehensible. He's not interested in teaching you about. He's not interested in giving you a vocabulary lesson. He's telling you a story, and he's telling you a story in a straightforward fashion. And the story, in this case, happens to be about a little kid who is raised for his own safety by ghosts in a cemetery after somebody kills his entire family. And that person may or may not still be looking for him. Gaiman does this really well. If for a fantasy book, he tells you a story, and the story isn't interesting for kind of intellectual gymnastics as some novels are. Some novels, like when I read Zelazny's Lord of Light, I felt like I was learning a lot about the references, like about the way Zelazny thought. I had to look up things about the way Zelazny thought. Neil Gaiman doesn't do that. What Neil Gaiman does is fills in his story with very interesting concepts about like these kind of adventures in the cemetery and these strange things like the Ghoul Gate and Nobody Owens' encounter with the Ghoul Gate, or meeting the Sleer and kind of the psychology of the Sleer, and it's good. I mean, it's good to say that. I'm trying to find a way to say that his language is very simple, that the reading level for this book is lower than somebody who than some sci-fi writers, but sometimes that stuff comes across as pretentious. I don't want to say I'm not saying I think Neil Gaiman is incapable of mind-twisting vocabulary. I'm sure he is. I'm absolutely sure that he is. But that's not what he went for here. What he went for was to tell you a fairy tale, and to tell you a dark, unusual fairy tale about the social life of a kid in a graveyard. He does this amazingly. Also, one of the things that Neil Gaiman does really well is not take the story where you think it's going. And that's great. That's fantastic. My usual complaints about stories are that they're predictable, or that there is no crisis and no conflict. Things like that. I want to worry about my characters. I want to see my characters struggle. I want to see my characters change. And I want to be surprised. And this book delivers all of those things. It does all of those things. And that's a huge, at least for my sensibilities, that's the highest testament I can pay to this book, is that it checked off all my boxes. I found this to be a very enjoyable read. And because there's a bunch of illustrations in it, it's a quick read. It's actually a very quick read at 300 pages. So, I mean, I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And if this is the kind of thing you're into, if you're kind of into darker sensibility things, if you're also going to read, if you're reading Bram Stoker Award winners, this is a good book for you. If you really like the early movies of Tim Burton, this might be a very good book for you. If you really liked his work with, like, the Sandman stuff, this is definitely a good book for you. I liked it. It carried my attention. Like I said, it was good at what it was. And that's a great thing for a book to do, is to not try to be something else. It's just trying to be kind of a modern, dark, unusual fairy tale, and it does that very well. The magic in it, and kind of it doesn't try to explain itself overly. It just kind of goes with, this is the way things are in graveyards. And you go, yeah, okay, there are ghoul gates. Why not? Why wouldn't there be ghoul gates? Dude says there's ghoul gates. There's ghoul gates. So there are ghoul gates. I mean, our reading proved that. And you should read this book, and you should find out what happens if you enter a ghoul gate, or if you make friends with with a witch, or if you, I don't know, if you go into ancient graves and steal things. Like, you should see what the Slayer does to you. So, yeah, Neil Gaiman's Graveyard Book. I like it. It won the Hugo Award in 2009. It's a fantasy novel. A dark fantasy. Well, is it dark? Yeah, it's dark. It's dark. It seriously starts with serial killing, so it's like crazy. And yeah, I think you should read it. If what I've said sounds like the kind of thing that you would like, then you should check this out. You should give it a look. Other than that, I think this review is done. This book is available wherever fine books are sold. I would suggest you get this copy because it has these pretty illustrations. It looks very nice. This is the second best looking book in my collection from Hugo Award winners, because my copy of Michael Chabon's the Yiddish Policemen's Union looks amazing. It's such a good looking book. So yeah, I think you should get this copy. And as always, the ISBN for this copy will be in the descriptor below this video. Because this is a good book, it's available wherever fine books are sold. You guys take care. Thanks for watching. Bye, everybody.